I can feel the love pouring out for the divine. I can feel it in your expression. Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for joining, and especially a big thanks to PSSM Global, and of course, very specially to Brahmashri Patriji, who has really uh, been such a big force behind this book. When he first got it, he just has been recommending it to everybody. So a big thanks to him. And so, yeah, it's good to see all of you. So let us. The topic of of today's session is creating strength with love and joy. So to begin with, what I would like all of us to do is get a little bit more in our bodies. Like, when we are listening to a talk, we get in the head. We want to listen, we have questions and all of that. But that sometimes will prevent you from listening because you already have so much in the mind you want to know, right? So take a few deep breaths and feel your body. Close your eyes, everybody, and take a deep breath. Feel it in your abdomen and breathe it out. And take your hands in and touch your feet a little bit. Touch your ankles, touch your knees. Take another deep breath. Touch your thighs, your abdomen. Breathe it out. Get back in the body and breath a little bit. Touch your hands, your arms. Every now and then we should touch our body like this and feel our presence being in the body. And that is one of the biggest messages of these goddesses, that appreciating, honoring the body is one of the biggest sources of strength that you can add in your life. Take another deep breath in and breathe out. And a few normal breaths. Get back in the body. Breath is one of the best ways to get back in the body. You will notice that when you try to feel your body and breath, there's a slight feeling of uncomfortableness in the mind, because the mind has to stop its activity. That activity is that self-driven, ego-driven activity. It continues. And as you start breathing in and as you start feeling the body, there's initially you feel that slight uncomfortableness because the mind wants to continue and now it has to stop. But stay with that uncomfortableness. Keep feeling the body. And slowly you'll become more alive to the senses, to the sounds in the room, to the body sensations. Feel the gravity of your body. Feel the body is very heavy and feel totally rested. So now we are a little bit more in our body and our breath. And so now your questions will become questions of the heart, and my answers will go deeper in your heart because you're listening to your body. Body is the door to the soul. Mind only asks the questions. Answers come from body and soul. Mind answers are limited. They are like circular answers, depending on your assumptions. But the experiential answer, where you feel the joy, feel the love, comes from the body and soul and your higher self. So that is why we need breath. Okay, so when you're ready, you may gently open your eyes. And now let's get into Let's get into the session with your questions, and we're all present. We can feel the presence. So, the topic today is creating strength with love and joy. It's a wonderful topic. It's a topic that the book begins with Saraswati ji's message. She wants to add strength to love and joy. How can we be strong in that? If you really think about it, true strength comes from that place only, place of love and joy. These are the highest soul feelings. You can even think of them as soul energies. The word energies is also very, very useful because energies is physicality, and also spirituality. So these energies of the soul and the universe, the primordial energies are joy and love, and they're infinite. If you think about it, we understand things based upon our mind using science. So we understand that the moon, is due to gravity. It is going around the earth, and earth is going around the sun. The sun is going around the Milky Way galaxy. There is a black hole. The sun is slowly moving around that. And even galaxies, we don't know. I mean, right now they think galaxies are just expanding, but even they might be moving around some center. That's not what the science says. They're just expanding, but everything is moving around everything. So what is this gravity? Is it possible that gravity is just another name for love? It is out of the free will. Everything is circling around everything. That message comes in the book, regarding atoms and electrons. Everything has free will. But the free will is so dedicated, so devoted, that we understand it as laws of science, because it never stops. Earth will never stop moving around the sun. But there could be tremendous love, which comes across as gravity, tremendous love, due to which that movement keeps happening. So everything is joined in this tremendous love, tremendous joy. Everything is connected to everything. This is why we have astrology, because when you're born, there is a deep connection with everything. The child's upper chakras are open when they are born. So they can feel completely all the planets, all the positioning, everything. And everything has a role to play. So there's an imprint made as soon as you are born, because you come out from the womb. And that imprint is powerful. It creates the way that the life will be lived. Of course, you have free will and certain things, there is nothing deterministic completely. Planets don't mean that your life is just going to be this one particular way, but everything is connected to everything. So there is a way that is formed. There's an imprint made, and then your life will go according to that. But you can always transform it by going inward, because joy and love, in their infinite uh, expression, joy gets even beyond time. In I mean, I don't want to introduce too many concepts, but in Einstein's relativity, time is surrendering to light. Speed of light is the only thing that is constant. Time becomes relative. But that's not how we understand time. We think time as 1 second, 2 seconds as absolute, right? But Einstein's theory was so revolutionary because he said, no, time is not absolute. Speed of light is absolute. And so time and space bend. speed of light remains the same. So joy is filled with this light, right? So joy is absolute. Time can bend. So you can revisit your childhood when you were born with tremendous joy. Do a meditation, go back to your childhood and see, add joy to the childhood, add joy to the time you were born. Then you've changed time. Because joy is absolute, you can even change your astrology with that a little bit. You won't change it completely, but by doing a rebirthing process, remember joy and love are absolute. Time, space, everything is relative. You can actually modify your life. So by staying more in joy, you're changing your astrology because you're changing everything. You're changing time, space, everything. Not so much, slightly. Even in relativity, you cannot feel those effects in common day events. You only feel them when you're moving at some fractional speed of light. Nobody's moving at that fractional speed of light on Earth. So you know the differences are very, very small, right? So it depends how much joy you add in your life. If you add a lot of joy, then you can change your life. The time of your birth doesn't matter. You know, you're not locked in that, okay, this is my path and this is what it will be. Because know that joy and love are even bigger than anything, they're bigger than the constraints of time, bigger than the time of your birth, anything. So you have to recognize these energies of joy and love and other soul feelings. They are, or you can even call, as I said, call them energies also. And these soul energies, soul feelings, these are infinite and they're absolute, and especially the primordial ones. And then slowly you get many soul feelings, but not all of them um, are in the same in your. Everything starts with primordial joy, then love, then compassion is there, then you have abundance and gratitude and forgiveness and peace and freedom. And so all of these are words we use to understand the same thing, but it is so multidimensional that we have to give different words. Deep down, love is joy, joy is love, joy is laughter, laughter is creativity. Deep down, oh, there's a oneness in all of this. But we are communicating using the mind, and we are still living in human existence. So to us, they seem a bit different flavors. But there is that oneness, in all of these. So, so this is uh, the topic. That's why I spent a little time on love and joy. How do you create this strength? So now instead of staying a little bit abstract, let's move to some real world stories, and like how how facing adversity, some of the role models we've seen in our history, some of the incarnation of the goddesses and gods, how they invoked this joy and this love and how they changed their lives. So one historical figure that comes to my mind, which maybe will come in the next book. She, I didn't ask any questions about her, so obviously there were no answers. So there's some rules in the spiritual realms. You get answers to what you ask. There's no free advice given. If you don't ask something, you don't get the advice. So you have to make the effort. We have to ask. If you ask, it is given. If you don't ask, there is only humans give free advice. You have a problem and there are 100 people, they want to advise you how to solve it. Even if you don't ask, you just talk about the problem and you're not looking for a solution, and everybody will tell you how to solve it. But that's not how it works with divine beings. You have to specifically ask. So I did not ask about one historical figure we know of, and let us begin our discussion with her today, because she came in our meditations recently, and her name is Mirabai. Have you heard of Mirabai, all of you? Yeah. So let's talk about her and how she changed her life with love and joy, and how that became her source of strength. And that's the divine feminine way. Okay. So the image we received about Mirabai, that I meditated and recently was, she is completely dancing in joy, wherever she is, ecstasy. She's in that, and that's the image she showed. And so then I did some, I looked at some Mirabai's history and some of that, and it's very interesting what Mirabai's story is. So she was born in a village in Rajasthan named Kurki, yeah. And this is the same village my mother was born. And it's a village close to Pushkar, where I was born. And she was born there, but I think that must have been her mother's side of family, because they used to come to the mothers to give birth. And then she was raised in a town called Merta in Rajasthan. And she was a daughter of these Rajputs. They were the royal families, the Rathors, the royal family in Rajasthan. And she was born to, her father's name was Ratan Singh. She was born there and she was growing up, royal family. So as she was growing up, she just had this natural inclination for Krishna right from the beginning. So it was a house that was a Vaishnav house. They used to have, the Vaishnav path, the Hindu gods and goddesses, and they used to worship Durga. Actually, Durga was also this house. I'm not sure, but Durga was in her in-laws' house later. But this was also a Vaishnav house where she grew up. So there were images of Krishna. There was idols of Krishna. She was growing up, and the story goes that you probably all have read that one day there was this procession going on. You know how weddings happen in India. So there is this bridegroom on the horse, and he's all decorated, wearing his sherwani and his ornaments, and there is this very looking very princely and on the horse. And Meera is like a 10-year-old watching this. And now she has the intelligence because she's a 10-year-old. So as she's watching this, she somehow gets fascinated by the bridegroom, looking at him. So she just looks at her mother, and she just asks something like, "Who is my bridegroom?" And a 10-year-old asking, because she doesn't know anything about what it is, but she was fascinated by this bridegroom on the horse. So she just says, "Who is my, you know, bridegroom?" And the mother doesn't know what to say. What kind of question from a 10-year-old? So there's a statue of Krishna, a little statue, and she just points to that and she says, "Krishna, he's your bridegroom." And she already was inclined to that, as she was growing up in the house, she felt close to Krishna energy. So she immediately takes on to that energy, immediately. And now the whole world changes. Something happens to her. So she is taking care of that statue, little idol of Krishna. She's bathing it, she's putting clothes on it, she is talking to it, she's dancing around it. She is even putting the statue close to her in the bed when she's sleeping. Her whole life changes, it all becomes about Krishna. Now, some of this comes from our soul inclination. So, this was the immediate thought when I thought about Meera, that she most likely, and I felt this very strongly in my body, that's how we channel. So I'd never heard this, but I felt in my body most strongly that, and then this is a message coming, that she's a incarnation of Radha, of Lakshmi. And then I researched it, and that's what everybody's saying. I mean, that is how people have understood her, if you research her, that she's an incarnation of of Radha. So same stream of Lakshmi coming like that. But even people who don't know this, if you were to reflect on her life, this thought will come from your divine beings that she's Radha. Same thing, you just feel it. And so we know about the love of Radha and Krishna. So as she's growing up, she came in this life, this period of 16th century was also the time when Tulsi Das was born. This was a very special period. There are periods which are special. So in this period, Meera also comes. And Tulsi Das was the incarnation of Valmiki. He came to add love and joy in Ramayana. So he wrote Ramcharitmanas. There are differences. The differences are that the seventh part of Ramayana, which was added on by the male priests after Valmiki, which is what the research says, Indian government says, which is also what Lakshmiji says, it was all added up. That part is not there in Ramcharitmanas. All the stories of, Sita being removed from her palace, from her house, and taken by Lakshman, all that, if you look at Ramcharitmanas, that doesn't exist. He was connected. Tulsidas was connected. He used to get visions of Hanuman, Lakshmiji. He lived long. There was not a reason that he wouldn't have put the seventh part. The only reason was it was not true. And he was incarnation of Valmiki. So he did not put it because he wanted to correct Ramayana. Of course, those were political times. So he didn't want to make a big deal about it. He didn't want to announce that Valmiki's Ramayana that you read is wrong, mine is right. He didn't want to create that kind of contention. He simply left it out. The seventh part just doesn't exist. So it's a very special time. Valmiki was born as, Tulsidas, and Radha was born as Meera at that time. So she's growing up and she is in love with Krishna. Krishna becomes everything for her. She's growing up, she's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There is also the time where girls become romantic. So he was also the one who she took on as her husband. So he became everything for her. Her husband, the one whom she took care of, her God, her divine being. It was all Krishna for her. And she was Radha, so obviously it makes sense. And she wrote some of the most beautiful poetry. Today, they say either these were originally hers or inspired by her. After she passed away, the whole India was aflame with, like at least North India and even South India, it went with the effect she had. She was like the first true divine feminist. There's a little bit of that feminist, divine feminist, I would call it, because she went against almost everything at the time. Family conventions, social conventions, every conventions, complete freedom, like she did what she did. So Meera, uh, as she devoted herself to this energy of Krishna, it transformed her. She was, of course, Lakshmi's incarnation, Radha's incarnation. So obviously, she's been enlightened before. So even in this life, she will get that kind of enlightenment. So as she surrendered in complete devotion, her chakras opened more and more. And her poetry reflects that. Like her poetry is magnanimous. It's like there are things like, mountains are my shoulders, my body is like the earth, like, the whole, the sky is who I am. The way the poetry goes, you can feel that she's become something more than just a human being. And then there's this deep longing for Krishna in the poetry of the invisible, and beautiful, and that inspired many more. After even she passed away, she probably inspired those people who had connected with Meera. She's probably coming in her dreams and giving more poetry. So that led to more poetry. And now they say there are like, thousands and tens of thousands of bhajans which are sung in India, inspired by her. Lots of bhajans. And it all came from that source. So why did that source become so big, so important? She was a human being, She just lived 400 years ago. We're not talking about 2000 years ago. She's a recent incarnation, right? So what happened? So let's continue with the story. She turns 18, and when she turns 18, she is married. And she is married to somebody who's a prince. Bhojraj, his name is, and he's the son of Rana Sanga. Rana Sanga is the one who's famous for having fought Babur many times, and many times he defeated Babur's armies. But then he was betrayed by one of they made a coalition of all the Rajputs, and they fought Babur, and they would have won, but there was a betrayal by one of the kings or generals, and that betrayal led to Babur defeating them. So, so what happened then when she married Bhojraj? What happened? Uh, he was both impressed, Bhojraj, and both like got afraid and got into a little bit of fear. Like, who is this woman I've married? She doesn't seem to love me as much as Krishna, and she's completely devoted to Krishna. And he kind of was intrigued by that. Like, what is this? Like complete devotion. But there are many versions of these stories in the scriptures. What really happened. Some are added, some are contradictory. What happened, what didn't happen. But certain things are clear, that she was totally devoted to Krishna, that after her marriage, she did her duties dutifully, whatever was required, and then she would go to the temples. And she was fond of all temples associated with Krishna, which she did all of her life. Excuse me. So she would go to the temple in Chittor, where the palace was, and there was a temple. And later on, it seems they even her temple was even built in the palace later. But she would go to the temples, and she would go into that ecstasy, because that is what she was. She remembered her life as Radha, and she would dance with Krishna. So in these temples, she would dance in public. Now, India and the Rajasthan of India was maybe a little different, but it was kind of what it is even 50 years ago, what I grew up with in Pushkar. I saw a lot of that tradition, and how women were raised, and how they had to the women. It was patriarchy by then, because Babur had already ruled for some time, and they would take away the Hindu women, and so whatever they used to do, this parda and all that came with Babur, because they had to protect their women. So all that had spread already. So women's role was not that independent, that you could just go in a temple and start dancing, right? But she would do that. And as she would do that, the word came back to the family that she goes, and this is like he was a crown prince, Bhojraj, and she is his wife, and she goes and dances in temples. They didn't like it, obviously. But she was in her joy and ecstasy, and they didn't like it. Now, this is where the challenge comes. What do you do? Do you stop doing that? Do you surrender to your family and, stop expressing your love for Krishna? She was the divine feminist. She chose no. My love for Krishna is real. So she continued that. So the misunderstanding increased between her and the family. They could not understand her. She could not understand them. And they were worshippers of Durga, her in-laws, and they wanted her to surrender to that energy. She said, for me, everything is Krishna. Not that Durga is amazing, but she had a path. You can have a path, and her path as Radha was Krishna. So she totally surrendered to Krishna. They didn't know what to make of it for a while, but then they started having problems. This is not good. She is giving a bad name to the family. She dances in public and this and that. So then the in-laws tried to do certain things. The stories go. They sent a glass of poison, and She just took Krishna's name and she drank it, and it became nectar for her. By then, her chakras had opened enough that she had these spiritual powers. They sent a basket of flowers, but in that basket of flowers, they didn't put the flowers, they put a cobra snake. But when she opened the basket, she found a Krishna's idol and a garland. So these things would happen and she just wouldn't die. They were trying to kill her. But who ends up dying is her husband in the war with Emperor Babur. 3 years after she got married, the husband died. So husband died. Now she's a Rajput woman. Many Rajput women, especially from royalty, would become sati, would go on the pyre and light themselves up. She refused to do that. She said, my path is with Krishna, and Krishna would give her guidance. So she did not do that. Then she kept living like this with these misunderstandings with the family. Someone named Vikram Singh became the new king, and both her father-in-law and her husband died. But still, there were these problems. So due to that, then she decided that maybe I need to leave this place and go back to where I grew up. So she went back to Kurki, but her parents didn't accept her. It was kind of like it is 100 years ago, 400 years ago was not so different. Parents were also like, now you are your in-laws, and, so we don't want to deal with this. So then she asked Krishna, what should I do? And she was told, go to Vrindavan. So she walked from Rajasthan in the, heat, and she went all the way to Vrindavan. And as she's going to Vrindavan, somehow because of her energy, the word spread. So she already had a following by then, because she used to do these dances and she was in total ecstasy. When you see that on somebody's face, you recognize that they are a great saint. Especially Indians are very connected to that energy in India. They were not that scientific. They were more of heart people. So when they saw somebody who's totally lit like that, dances like a goddess, they know this is it. We got to follow this person. So there were many like that, and so they followed her. And so by the time she reached Vrindavan, people knew who she is, and and she would continue that, go to temples and dance. But there she goes to Vrindavan now. There's a power structure, again, a patriarchy. There are these mutts, and then there are these, big priests who are supposed to, run the temples. And one of them tells them that, we don't allow women here like this. So she talks to him and she says, you think you are the man here? She looks at him and she says, there's only one man here. The only Purusha here is Krishna. You're in love with Krishna, I'm in love with Krishna. So we're all women. You're also a woman, I'm also a woman. We're all women because we're all in love with Krishna, deep down. There's only one man here. So she says that, and this Pandit priest, he just surrenders to that energy and he says, okay. But so she lives in Vrindavan for a few years and has a good influence there. And then the story goes after that, when the time comes, she gets older, she goes to Dwarka. And then there she has a very interesting end to her life. The story goes, the legend is that she is looking at Krishna's statue, and when the time comes for her to leave, she just merges with the statue energetically and she's gone. Yeah. Now, there are stories like this uh, about in Tibet, you'll see stories of, rainbow bodies, and, how people just leave their bodies and only hair and nails are left. And, so love and joy are so deep, so infinite. Joy is like light, joy is fire. Joy is the fire element. And as you start adding more and more and more joy into your life, your body starts changing. That's what they mean by rainbow body in Tibet. Your physicality starts changing. There's almost a mutation, like the spiritual energy, physical energy starts becoming one. So that can happen. I mean, I'm not, I'm also scientific. I have a, you know, I had a mathematics, my BSc was in mathematics. So, so I have a scientific mind, but I'm open to energies, and energies, it's possible, I mean, we hear about all these, hear about practices in Tibet even now. There's something called Tammo, where the monks just breathe. And as they are breathing, they control the energy of the body. And the experiments done by Harvard scientists, in the winter months, they put damp clothes on them, wet clothes on them, and their bodies, there's just, no clothes on their bodies, just this damp clothes in the winter. And just by breathing practices, they can dry up these clothes, their bodies become so hot. So this is scientifically proven. This is like people have done studies and they've seen these monks do that. So energy, physical energy, spiritual energy, it connects with joy. Joy is an energy. You can transform your body. That is how miracles happen even in PSSM. You just breathe and your sicknesses are gone. Right? That's what I hear from a lot of you. That just you go deep into your breath, then you tap into that energy, and then you add some sickness and it disappeared. It can happen. I'm not saying everybody should do that. Maybe there are times to go to a doctor, go to a doctor. But if you feel you have that power, then at least try it. It's not going to hurt you. Surrender to that joy, surrender to that joy. So joy is a great source of strength. And it is a source of strength that can make a woman like Meera in a patriarchal society, which I have seen because I was born in 1963, So I've seen the women there, how the ghungat and parda and all of that, how the male patriarchy, it was not so different in 1970 as it was, let's say, maybe a little, now it has changed. Now we are in 2020. So even now today, if you go to places like Udaipur, you can find a woman who's completely wearing and parda and, all the water on their head and all that. Even today, you can see these images. All that patriarchy is still living in India. India, some places are stuck in time. You can actually visit those places, and they were the same 300 years ago. Also, they've not moved. So you can feel that in some villages. You can feel that. So Meera was from that time. In that time, she danced in ecstasy in temples in with public, and she lived her life, and she wrote poetry and inspired tens of thousands of bhajans in India. The whole India started singing these songs. Even my mother probably grew up with some of these songs. Had such influence on all over India. Just one woman in a patriarchal world just lived her life with her joy, with her love for her Krishna, with her joy for her dance for Krishna. Look what was created. Think about, and this is 16th century. This is not some time from 2000 years ago. This is like recent times, under Mughals. And how did that happen? So that's the strength of love and joy. So now bringing this back to our lives, how can we do that? How can things happen to us? What do we do? And what did Meera do? I'm sure the husband must have spoken to her like, what is it? You don't love me. You only have this Krishna. Why did you marry me? And I'm the prince. And all these questions must have happened in normal marriage, right? I'm sure he would have spoken. She could have gotten depressed. A lot of marriages, there are arguments, and the husband tries to dominate, and many times, and the wife gets depressed, and they don't know what to do. The mistake, the only differences between that marriage and Meera's marriage is Meera has a source that nourishes her, that love for Krishna, and that joy, that love and joy, and that respect for one's body also, that my body needs to dance, so I will dance. Not thinking that what does society think? I'm dancing in a temple. My body wants to dance. She would dance even sometimes, even on the way. She was going to Vrindavan And there were some towns, there were some people who had heard about her. She would go to those temples also and dance, So she was like a energy field walking. So can we take that lesson in our life? Can we stay in joy even when the husband is, dominating and all that? Just, there's a fly comes and you ignore the fly and you start keep eating your food. You don't get bothered by it. But why do we make these events which happen around us such big events? Maybe it's like a fly. Okay, okay, he said that to me. Ignore it. Now I go back to my joy. I go back to my practice and I go back to my love. Whatever you love, you might love God, you might love the environment, you might love your child. Love is love, right? So I will live in love. So somebody shouted at me. Let them shout. It didn't affect me. They didn't beat me up. Okay, they just shouted. So let them shout. I will go back to my joy. Can we have that kind of that passion to live, surrendering to joy and love as much as we can? Because as you do that, it will transform them. Even her husband was transformed somewhat. He was very intrigued by her. They tried to do all the bad things they did, the in-laws did, and all of that. But he was also intrigued by her. What? So more, that was a very different time. More likely than not, if today you surrender to love and joy, your husband or your in-law, whatever, they'll also surrender to love and joy. They'll see you like a goddess. There is enough awakening today that they will surrender. It won't be so bad as it was back then. She was a princess with expectations. She could not go to a public temple and this and that. Today, if you are reflecting that love and joy, people will be happy. The arguments will disappear. Maybe not completely, but it's easier today because today we have more democracy, a different world, and all that. Main message is how important it is to do things from the place of joy. Whether you dance from joy, whether you love your child from joy, whether you and how important it is to love. So don't let the world stop you from being love and being joy. Don't let that happen to your life. That is an invisible source you have, and you have to keep it. That source is not controlled by physicality, by body, but by mind, and even by body. It's not. It is joy is there. And body is also a great source of joy. Eating healthy, taking care of your body, and dancing, that soon. I mean, right now we have this group, Devi Circle. Some of you might be on it. I created it, and there's another group, Devi Circle World, right? I can see some hands. Anuradha is on it. So I'll soon start mentioning some of the work we will start. We're starting something called Devi Circle. And this Devi Circle is kind of inspired by these energies only, Meera energy, Radha energy, these energies. Like this kind of a divine feminism, which is surrendering to joy and love, which includes masculine because it is love. If the man shouts at you, you go more into the joy and love. That joy, love, laughter, that's how you control it. You go together with your other women friends and you always stay in that energy. So when you stay in that energy, whatever your situation is, maybe in some places in India, in Maharashtra, um, there was a story that we used to have this person, housekeeper, who used to come and help. This woman maid who would come and help. So one day she was complaining, and she was saying, my husband does not love me anymore. So my mother and I were like, how do you know he doesn't love you? So she said, he doesn't beat me anymore. Because he doesn't beat me anymore, he doesn't love me because he's beating someone else. Now, this is the level of patriarchy in India. This is true. This happens in Maharashtra. It used to happen in Maharashtra. I don't know whether it is true now. So the way she would understand that he doesn't love me is because he's no longer beating me, he's beating another woman. Now, even in that situation, if she could awaken her joy for life and love for life, she could create more boundaries, because that joy is fire. That energy will start stopping him from beating her, when he will see that energy in her. And she'll have some more sources to stop him. She'll find some friends, maybe she'll book a complaint, maybe she'll do something to stop it. But if she goes in depression, if she goes into fear, then she'll let it happen more and more. So there's no point of being in fear. Even in a bad situation, when somebody's beating you, if you remain in fear, then that'll keep happening more and more. What's the point of remaining in fear? So you have to come back to joy, love, your inner strength, to start putting some restrictions also, boundaries also. Hey, you're not going to mess with me. That's how Meera was able to say, I'm not going to become a sati, because she had that love and joy for Krishna, and she didn't see any point in just burning herself up with her husband when she was with Krishna. There was no point in doing that. Even some people might think that there's some value in that, valor in that, but she didn't see any point in that. She didn't do it. That is her freedom, and you'll get that freedom in your heart, in your body, in your life more, if you will start living more with joy, more with love. And as you do that, the true strength starts coming. So so this is one story. Now similarly, there are many other stories, but I've just gone on talking. So let me see if anybody has any questions, and then we'll talk about some other stories of other women who through joy and love have changed their life. Not only changed their life, they changed the whole country. I mean, look at Mira's influence on the whole of India. Just one woman living her life with joy and love recently, you know, just changes the whole culture in a nation. He's known as like one of the biggest poets, saints of India. That's the strength of love and joy. So, are there any? I mean, I'll open it up and then we will maybe weave some more stories with if there are any questions people have.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. This is Suresh Babu. Great pranams to Anand Kureshji. Today is a great day in the history of Pyramid Spiritual Society movement. Uh, we have your presence at our Mahila Jama Chakra during December 19th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could able to meet you. I'm the trustee of the Pyramid Spiritual Trust. You enlightened our Pyramid Masters in a huge way during those 10 days. Today is another golden day in the to be written in the history. Uh, but now you are given a beautiful lecture and a beautiful story on love and joy is the infinite. But you are given a very detailed and story about Mirabai. It's very enlightened us. I read this your great book, Thousand Seeds of Joy. I have a very small doubt. You can throw some light. Uh,
Sure.
yeah, here a great statement given by Saraswati ji that the emptiness is infinite presence,
Yeah.
where because it has no center and boundaries. Of course, in a detailed way, message was given, but still, if you can throw some light on the statement, our field masters will be um, awaiting for your great.
That's a very good
Thank you
question.
very much.
Thank you, Sureshi. That's a very good question. And I would love
Yeah,
to talk about that. It's a good
yeah,
question. That's one of
yes,
the statements in the book.
yes,
Emptiness is infinite presence.
yeah,
Okay. It has
yes,
no
sir.
center, because it has no center and no boundaries. Right.
Yes, yeah,
So let's understand this statement deeply, like what is being said. Okay. In some different contexts, even in Mira's context. Okay.
yeah,
So
yes,
so what do we mean when we say something as a center or something as boundaries? First, you have to notice that these two reflect each other. Okay. Only when
yes,
you have a center, say your center is relative to the boundary and boundary is relative to the center.
yeah, vice
Okay.
versa.
Only things that have boundaries will have a center. Only things that have a center will have a boundary, So
Yeah,
that itself is relative to each other, That is the finiteness of the world. Always has a center, always has boundaries. Right? When you're truly infinite, when you're truly infinite, then there is no end anywhere in sight.
okay, yes,
Then there
yes,
cannot be any center also. How can there be a center of something that is infinite? How can that be? Because center implies that you have equal distance in all directions, right?
exactly.
No concept of equality. This just goes on forever. Everything is just
Yeah,
completely infinite. So with infinity, there cannot be center. There cannot be any boundaries. There cannot be
yes,
any of that. Now, when we say emptiness is infinite presence, what do we mean by that? This is that other part was a little bit just more technical, but this part is very deep.
yes,
That emptiness is infinite presence. When you empty yourself, and by when we say emptying yourself, what do we mean? We mean we're emptying this mind
mind,
that we have, we're emptying that.
yes,
As we're emptying the mind,
yeah,
what happens is we start becoming aware of what really is happening, what this whole energy space is. Because it is a mind that has limited you to feeling like you're just this body.
yes,
It's very limited. It is a mind's, and it is very deep. It is, it is a whole process of birthing and, keeping that mind at a very cellular level alive. If you can completely dissolve the mind, as they say in even in quantum physics, like if there is no observer, then the observation is created by the observer. It is influenced by it. But if you just remove that mind, that observer completely, there's an explosion. And you suddenly realize you're not limited to just this body. Everything has become you. This bed is
yes,
me, this wall is me, everything is me. Sky is me, earth is me, everything is me.
yes,
And it's not even a feeling of me, it is more a feeling of amness. From I-ness, you go to amness. From amness, you go to isness. It's always this whole idea of I just disappears. Everything just becomes isness. And you energetically just become one with everything. So that's the meaning of emptiness, dissolving that I-ness, that ego place. As that starts dissolving a little bit, you start feeling, you become more empathetic, you start feeling more energies. Even there are like minor enlightenments, you'll feel that oneness with trees and so on. But as that dissolves more and more and more, you start becoming that energy field that is infinite, which is everything and nothing, which is beyond these concepts of I, you know, and you. So I am talking to me right now. I am Suresh ji. That is literally what's happening because if you think about it, where is the you? When I say you, where is that
yeah,
you? In your
yes,
consciousness, you're not experiencing yourself as you. Are you? No.
no,
You're also
no,
experiencing yourself as I. As
yeah,
intimate an I as I experience myself as an I.
yes,
Everybody here is experiencing themselves as an I, right?
yeah,
All the animals, trees, they're also experiencing themselves as, that I.
that
When I
natural,
think of you as a you, that's just a figment of imagination. That is not what is happening in front of me, that I'm the person I'm talking to. What is happening is an I. An I
yes,
isn't talking to an I. And
yes,
that's a singular I. We think it is a divided I. No, it's not a divided I. It's a singular I. We're all feeling it's the same I between in all of us.
yeah, yes,
But the mind makes it feel it's a I and you have a different I. It's a singular I. It's the same
yes,
energy. Singular I in
yes,
Lakshmi ji, Saraswati ji, you, me, Krishna. Everything is in that same I, same source energy. So as you surrender more deeply to that, the mind stops. Mind needs this I and you for the ego to be alive,
yes,
to be different. I am me, you are you. So then the mind goes on. If I say all of us are I'm talking to me, you're also me, you're also me, just, just for a minute, just think like that. Just we're all me. It's only one I, that we're all talking to. Then you'll notice that the mind slows down. Mind doesn't have
yeah,
a place to go anymore
yes,
because there is
yeah,
all the questions stops, they stop
yeah,
talking to me. The questions are, less now, mind is slowed down. And it feels a bit uncomfortable. Why? Because the
yeah.
mind is used to living in the ego space. So the
It's,
mind doesn't like it. Mind doesn't like this kind of idea that you're also. Yeah, I'm talking to I. Mind doesn't like that.
yeah, ego
If
comes.
that is true, then I can't think anymore. Like the way I used to think, right?
Yes, yes,
So this is all a process of becoming that emptiness. All of these are ways. This visualization that all of it is me will empty you more, because anytime you have less of an ego, there'll be more emptiness. And sometimes it is uncomfortable initially, but this is where our breath and body comes in. If it is
exactly.
uncomfortable, then start feeling your breath, you know,
Practice.
from the body. Just keep practicing.
Yes,
And then that will calm you down more. And then start feeling people, when you talk to somebody, experience them as the I. There's a person with an I-ness talking to you.
yes,
Listen
yeah,
to them completely as they are talking. It's not a you, it's an I energy talking to you. Be fully present. Let them be fully present. Don't have your mind going on. Just take a few deep breaths, become empty, and let their I-ness speak. And completely surrender to that energy. What is happening. We're not saying you do what they say, but completely listen. Be completely fully present to that energy. Then you will have know what we call empathy. Oh,
yes,
that's how they really feel themselves. Because and reflect a little bit on their life, their childhood, what could have been
yeah,
their past life and their childhood and where they're at. Then you'll have a deeper understanding. Like, Donald Trump. Let's try
yeah,
to understand him as this I. He's
yes,
also I.
yeah,
It is me. Me is
yeah,
Donald Trump. The part of
definitely,
me
yeah,
talking like this. So what
yes,
could have happened that is making me behave like that? A part of me, which is Donald Trump, is behaving like he's behaving. What is that? What is happening? What was my childhood like as Donald Trump? That patriarchy of my father, that ambition, that, raising the child with complete lack of emotion, what that
yeah,
did to my mind, how I grew up. I became
yeah,
so fascinated by money only and superficiality, and I always had to win because my father wouldn't love me otherwise. And that little child, suffering child, like wanting love from the father, and father not loving the child unless the child was successful in a very
yes,
brutal way. He always had to win, always had to win. And growing up like that, I, as Donald Trump, growing up like that. And then, my father doing all kinds of things with the
yes,
women around and, growing up. And then maybe my past lives had some karma like that. Maybe I was somebody who wanted to be a king, could not ever be a king. So that idea of winning became so important in my life. I had to win at all cost. Even if people died, I didn't care. So
yeah,
karma, that is a part of me. No, we all have been kings like this in our some lives. Even Valmiki was, somebody who had a past, then he surrendered, and then so we all have a past. Anguli
yeah,
Manan, he had a past like that, he killed 900
yes,
people. So
yes,
all of that is me.
yeah,
Donald Trump is also me. I am also me. So if you think of him like that, you will get some understanding about where he is. And then with that understanding, if people had that understanding around him and they spoke to him with that joy, they could change him. But those people are in too much fear. The people who are around him, they're in too much fear. And they go with him with the fear energy. His advisors, they want him to behave differently, but they don't know how to approach him. They either get in fear or they get in anger. But stay in your joy. And with that joy, reach out to him and you will change him a little bit. And him is only me only. I'm changing me only. Like think of it like that. So we got to deeply, deeply surrender into this
yeah,
I energy, then you have a bigger effect on the world, because you stay in your joy and you see a part of me is struggling. You try to help that part of you only. You are a part of me who's struggling. You might be Donald Trump, you might be my wife, you might be my husband, whoever you're struggling, you are me only. But I stay in my joy, and from that joy, I listen to you with this emptiness which does not have mind, which is completely present to you and is in joy. And I see you, and I completely see you, you're suffering. Then I reach out to you. I reach out with a lot of love to a part of me that is struggling. There's a lot of forgiveness in that, because you are me.
yes,
You are me. How can I not have forgiveness? You are
oneness.
part of me that is a bit lost.
Yeah,
So I forgive you. I send love to you. I have joy for you. And then you, from that emptiness, that oneness starts happening and you start transforming more. So emptiness is infinite presence. It has so many ways can be explored forever. This
yeah,
is just some
yes,
ways,
yes,
but there
yes,
are
sir.
many ways of dissolving the mind.
Yeah,
And as you dissolve the mind more and more, you become more and more energy. And breath helps, techniques help because of that. Doing
sure,
yoga,
sure,
dance,
sure.
breath work, doing, these techniques
Yeah,
are ways to go deep in the body. And
yeah,
body is the way, body, soul, and higher self are the way to become the emptiness. Because that is where the mind will dissolve in the body, mind will dissolve in the soul, mind will also dissolve just by remembering Krishna. That's the
yes,
easy, devotion path is easy many times, but it requires an advanced seeker. You need
yes, yes.
that faith of a Mira, complete
Yeah,
faith.
total,
That
total surrenderness.
that I drink this, this is Amrit for me.
Yes,
100%.
yes.
If we
That's
have
it.
that,
That's it.
it becomes Amrit, because energy is energy. It will
Yeah,
transform.
not even an icon of the doubt.
And no, not even a percent. Even if you have a 1% of doubt, it won't work.
Correct. Yes, yes,
That's why if you walk on water with 1% of doubt that you'll drown, you will fall inside. But a
yes,
Jesus can walk on water because he has 100% faith. And this
yeah,
is, in a way, scientific in this way.
yeah,
See, science does not admit the role of belief on
yes,
reality. But we
yes,
know from medicine, belief changes reality. There are studies
exactly.
on placebos. If you believe a medicine will cure you, they found in studies 40% of the people get cured just by that belief. It's a placebo,
Yes, yes,
very well known.
yeah, yes, yes,
Belief does affect reality. Now, if you take that logic a little bit further and you
yeah,
say, my belief is total, my faith is 1000%, like you really meditate, surrender, like, it takes work. But if you have
yeah,
that level of faith, then you'll
yes,
move energy, you're changing energy. And
yes,
it can be very scientific that, you change energy so much that you become a
yes,
rainbow body. You can do miracles, you can do whatever. Because in the energy world, everything shifts. So that emptiness becomes infinite presence as you go on dissolving the ego, dissolving the mind, dissolving the ego.
mind, yeah,
It has to be done in a skillful way. You cannot throw your ego out. You have to do with a
yeah,
lot of love. Even
yes,
even your own self, you have to see from a third point of view, that you are the infinite being watching this little ego. Because you really are the infinite being, that who you truly
yeah,
are. This ego
yeah,
is just pretending to be who you are. So watch your ego from that space also, from that space of love. Hold your ego. The ego is just trying to protect you. And then as you love your ego a little bit, the ego will dissolve.
yes,
Ego will
yeah,
surrender. Okay, there's only love and joy, so why do I need to be here? The
yeah,
ego. But if you
yes.
fight with your ego, don't do that. If you fight with your ego will suddenly
It,
come.
it,
It will,
you have to accept it immediately. Respond. Yeah,
you have to accept your shadow, your ego.
yeah,
Completely go
yes,
with love, joy. So in the end,
yes,
it again comes back to joy and love. So
yeah,
even your ego. So deeply, this emptiness is not emptiness like how we understand like lack. This emptiness is emptiness of the mind. And this emptiness is complete fullness. Remember your childhood when you had those magical moments
yes,
that
yeah,
that we remember those magical moments, where sometimes we are reminded of them and we get tears in our eyes. Oh, I used to feel like this when I was a child.
yes, yes,
Complete
yeah,
ecstasy. the complete connection. That is emptiness because there was no mind in that. So that
Yes.
emptiness is amazing fullness, a fullness
Yeah.
we've forgotten,
Yes.
a fullness
Yeah.
that we used to know as children. Because
Yeah.
vacation used to be long. 3 months vacation, 2 months vacation used to feel like, oh my God, there's so much time. You live
Yeah.
every day, like the whole day used to go. It used to feel so
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
What happened?
Yeah.
Nowadays, a Christmas comes, next Christmas comes. One Diwali comes, next Diwali comes. Where did all
Yeah.
disappear? Because we're in our head. We're not living,
Yes.
thinking too much, and so we don't feel the space of the time. We don't
Yeah.
feel a whole day go by. So
Yeah.
that emptiness will create fullness. Empty out, and that is why practices are needed. That is
Practice
why we
is a
do
must. Yeah.
or we do yoga. Even with
Yeah.
yoga, you can feel that energy happening. So in the end, use your body, soul, mind to create the emptiness. So your body, soul, higher self to dissolve
Yeah.
your mind and create the emptiness, and you'll become more and more infinite presence, step by step.
Exactly. Practice makes man perfect. So the
Yeah,
more you do practice, you are nearer to making your mind empty.
yeah.
That is the whole underlining it.
I
Yeah.
gave a
Thank you
long
very much.
answer because the question is so big, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know, I know. But even then, you are given a very detailed explanation. It's very understandable and very enlightened explanation. Thank you very much, sir.
Welcome, yeah.
Yeah,
So maybe we'll talk about maybe another some other women
yeah. No,
with
this is yeah, Mahila energy is going on, sir. Yeah, we have to give importance to yeah, Mahila.
yeah, strength with love and joy. Men
Yeah,
also.
exactly.
There are some
Yeah,
more who
yes,
are
sir.
suited
We
more,
have to, yeah, we have to give top priority to our women. Yeah,
yeah. Or the feminine
yes.
within us.
Feminine energy, yes. Yeah,
Not women, but the feminine part of all human beings that has been subdued has to
yes.
rise up. And the love, joy are fire and water energies. And so Lakshmi ji says fire, water is feminine. Earth and air are masculine. Earth is physicality, air is the mind energy, and
Yeah,
fire is joy energy, and water is love energy. So we're talking about
waters.
love and joy, we're talking about fire, water. And that's
Fire.
feminine.
Yeah, yes.
So there was you obviously know about Radha's life, but Radha also in our book, the way Lakshmi ji talks about Radha is in a little bit of a different way.
Okay.
In fact, Radha is a little bit older.
Ah,
Lakshmi says I was a little bit older when I would meet Krishna. So, but we've created this idea that she was a teenager, but no, she was a little bit older, and she was more like a crone energy. So she was, she said she didn't want to marry Krishna
mm,
because she was very independent. There's
yeah,
another feminist over here with Radha.
yes. Yeah.
So she would visit him, and they had a very good friendship. So Krishna had, Lakshmiji's three incarnations were with Krishna in that life. So Radha
Okay.
was his friend as a crone. Crone energy is very wise energy. Rukmani was the maiden, the mother matron energy, which was Lakshmi's incarnation, who was Krishna's wife. And then Draupadi was the maiden energy. The
Oh,
maiden is like the younger energy. So you have maiden, matron, crone. So Lakshmi ji came as all three to be with Krishna, who's Vishnu, in that life. Right. So as Radha, she was very independent and very enlightened.
yes.
And she would, she was independent. She had her own place where she lived. She also had some kind of a retreat set up in some place in mountains that that Lakshmi ji talks about. And then it was kind of steep to get there. She said like horses could not climb there, the book says. And she would stay in these higher places of energies to connect with the divinity, to connect with uh, even Krishna's energy, because Krishna was very busy, she says. She describes in some detail how Krishna was in the book.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
states, like he would speak a little bit faster, she would say, and then he would take care of family a lot, and everybody was family for him. Loved everybody, and he was doing so many things. He was running a kingdom. He's helping Pandavas. He's meditating. He's and he's present for the population like a true benevolent king all the time. So he was very very busy. So she talks about him, but their love was very divine, very special. They would come together. They would even dance together. You know, and she talks a little bit about that. So there was a little bit of intimacy, but it was not intimacy at all in the way the world has uh, explained it. You know, it was sensualness, but but there was not sexuality to it. So there was a complete sensual connection, a dancing, talking, loving in that way, and there was so much joy in that energy that both of them were so enlightened that they didn't have to come together like two human beings. Just by holding hands or dancing together would get them in that ecstasy, because they were so both of them were so enlightened. And when you're that enlightened, all your chakras are open. And all your chakras are open, you don't need an outer union. It's happening inward. You're already in that union. And that is the meaning of tantra also. It is all within one's body. One can experience that just by holding somebody's hand, because you're so spiritually together, your souls are one. So this was Radha was like a complete manifestation of that enlightened energy. you know Radha is not even mentioned in the older scriptures. She was revealed later. She came around 1000 AD. She starts being mentioned in our scriptures, because then she showed herself with some of these meditators, saints meditating, channeling. Then they wrote about Radha. But Radha's mention is not there in Mahabharata, if you go back to the old scriptures, because this was the invisible. uh, she was invisible to the world. She was like living in these places, and she would meet Krishna. But Krishna would meet many people. We don't know everybody who he met, right? Because he was such a profound energy. So this Radha's connection was revealed later, when the Bhakti movement started. And then Meera was Radha's incarnation, and then Meera's objective was, even Radha, however uh, she was revealed. What we think of Radha, oh, she missed Krishna so much, and then some stories are she committed suicide, this, that, no, nothing like that happened. She was independent. She didn't want to marry Krishna. They were like, they would come together for spiritual communion. They would talk to each other. Lakshmiji says that I would be like a battery to him. So then I asked in the book, what do you mean by you would be like a battery to him? He already full? Why would he need to be energized by you? So she said, well, I was not the only one who energized him. Even other things energized him. Even taking care of the people get his energy all filled up. So he would be resting, and then he would be so alive. So when he would be alive, he would be taking care of people, he would be with Radha, or he would be doing those things. So again, the connection is about that profound primordial joy and love that happens with spiritual practice. With Radha's story, we learn that is not divided from what we think of as love. It is all in Tantra, everything comes together. The physical, she says, my love was Vajra love, which is all physical, mental, spiritual, all together. It is just one love. And we don't define it as, this kind of love, that kind of love. It is a bhakti love. That is the same Meera's love. Krishna is also husband to Meera. You know. So it's just this one love, complete love, which is you become one. And that love, joy, becoming totally one is their story. So the last story I want to briefly mention, which I've mentioned once, is about Saraswati. Again, coming in a challenging circumstance, and then again surrendering to love and joy and a life that affects millions of human beings. So this is a life where I've spoken once, I think, in one talk, where there are, do you know who's the Krishna of Buddhism? There's a Krishna-like figure in Buddhism. Who's that? That is not Gautama Buddha. Gautama Buddha was Buddha, but there's a Krishna type Buddha in Buddhism. Anybody knows that? He is. His name is Padma Sambhava. He's also called Guru Rinpoche. And whole of Tibet is about Padma Sambhava energy.
yes,
Even Bhutan, there is this place which is dedicated to Padmasambhava. So Padmasambhava, his birth was also very, miraculous, like Krishna was born. So, and he came, he came kind of enlightened. He got enlightened very quickly. I mean, he was not fully enlightened. His full enlightenment happened with one princess Mandarva, and who was he's associated with two women. One is Princess Mandarva, another is Yeshe Syogal. So Yeshe is somebody that he wants to incarnate. He's asking Saraswati in one of the scriptures that when will you incarnate? When will you incarnate? Because his path has begun, and he is spreading this knowledge. He's become enlightened with Mandarva. He's in some caves in Nepal, and then he goes to Tibet at the invitation of the emperor of Tibet. His name is Trison Detsen, is the emperor of Tibet. And that emperor has heard about Padmasambhava. He invites him to Tibet. And by then, Yeshe Syogal has become uh, this emperor's wife by then. So who is Yeshe? Who had become the emperor's wife? So Yeshe was Saraswati's incarnation according to Buddhism, and she was born as a princess in a noble family in Tibet, Princess of Karshan, they call her, and her birth was painless, and she was a divine child. She was very, very beautiful, and as she was, you know, she was growing up, the tribal chiefs around there heard about her beauty and all of that. So she's not interested in marriage and these things. She's very much into her chakras are so open. Some of these people, their lower and upper chakras are so combined and so open, or they're opening up so amazingly that they feel such infinite ecstasy in simple things, just walking in nature, just looking at a mountain. They feel such joy within their body, outside, everything that, when they see a normal human being, a tribal chief wants to marry them, and they can tell immediately just by looking at them, that they don't have that infinite presence that they're feeling. So they don't want to marry. What's the point of getting married and then getting into these restrictions? You can't do this. You have to cook for me. You have to do that. All kinds of problems in all of that. She didn't want to marry. So she didn't want to marry, but she had a patriarchal father. So he married her to one of the tribal chiefs. Now she didn't want to go, so then she had to be dragged. They chained her and they took her in. And then she escaped. She escaped from one tribal chief, then the other tribal chief got her. Then, so then somehow she went through all this torture and all of that. And then somehow the word spread that this beautiful woman, she doesn't want to be married and she is incredibly beautiful. And somehow the emperor heard about her. And then he saved her. Then he invited her, and somehow the father decided that she'll get married to the emperor. So even the emperor, she didn't want to get married to, but he was a kind of a spiritual fellow. You know, this guy, the Trisong, he was a spiritual type, so he left her alone. You do your practices, you be my wife, but and he allowed her to do her spiritual practices. So she was kind of okay, happy. And then he was spiritual enough to invite Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava. And this is where Guru Padmasambhava had been looking for his Saraswati, who would come, and he needed her because she was going to do all kind of scribing, writing of scriptures, which will create Vajrayana Buddhism. And he was so busy talking and being with people, he didn't have time to write. So you need that woman, that strength. He was, even though he was enlightened, he needed that partner, to do his spiritual work. So he had been in some of the poetry, he's been saying, where are you, my Saraswati? When are you coming? And then he goes to visit the emperor, and he looks at Yeshe, and they immediately he knows that she's Saraswati. So they talk, and then the emperor is happy because he's emperor is a spiritual person. So he knows that, okay, this is why I married her, I saved her from those tribal chiefs. And The Yeshe feels the same. She gets very affected by his energy, by Padmasambhava. She wants to go with him. So then they go together. And then she becomes his spiritual consort. And, they spend time together. They go in caves. He teaches her. He's enlightened by then. So, and Saraswati's incarnation. So she's just waiting to get enlightened. So with Padmasambhava, she gets all the full enlightenments. Slowly she gets fully enlightened. And now, if you look at her life, what is there in her life? She's being raised up. Patriarchal father marries her, but she surrenders to joy and love and freedom. Freedom is, their independence that Meera showed. That when Meera wanted to dance in temples, she danced. So with Yeshe, she didn't want to be with the tribal chief, so she left. So that is the freedom part. Freedom is also a soul feeling. So you have to celebrate freedom also, but not fighting. Freedom doesn't mean that we fight against somebody. She didn't want to destroy the tribal chief. She just wanted her freedom. Leave me alone. Let me do my spiritual practices. So you see those divine feminine values that she surrendered to, and she maintained her practice. Her practice is how she was able to overcome these difficulties. If she didn't practice, if she didn't feel that joy and love, she would surrender in fear. She would become the tribal chief's wife. What's the point of fighting this guy? He's going to kill me. So let's just be his wife. A lot of women do that, because they don't have that fire of joy and love. But if you have that fire of joy and love and freedom, then you'll create a path. So she somehow manifested her path, going to these tribal chiefs, coming to the emperor, eventually finding Padmasambhava. And that is became her source of enlightenment. Then they did different kinds of practices, the Tibetan Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, and through that she got fully enlightened. Then throughout her life, she wrote these scriptures about Padmasambhava, about her own life, many, many scriptures. Some of them she put her energy into these stones and things that when these enlightened masters would come in the future, they're called treasure revealers or tertons in Buddhism. That in Buddhism were very Buddhists are very smart people. So, you know, they knew that a scripture should come only at a certain time. There's a timing to these different scriptures. So if you look at Bible was a scripture, but was not mm, everything is, of course, has its own timing. But when Bible came, the world was not ready for Bible. The world was not ready for Jesus. When he would talk about those teachings, they put him on the cross, and he was making saying simple things about love and joy and all of that. But the world was not ready. So Buddhists understood this, that even Tibet, as good as an empire it is all political in the end. You know, emperors want the full power because they don't want a saint or somebody to be more powerful. That was a big fight between saints and kings, because saints were so free. They would be like, I don't have any ruler, like even king also. I say things which are what I say. Kings didn't like that. Kings wanted everything to be according to them. So they changed the Bible, and they changed the Bible, and they made Jesus a much smaller person than Jesus was. Jesus was like Buddha, very enlightened, but they make him very small in the Bible, and that became the Bible. So these tertons and treasure revealers, they will discover what Yeshe has written, but Yeshe did not reveal all of her writings right away. Because if she revealed it, what they would do, they would destroy it. They would create it according to what they think is correct, the kings and all that. There's a timing to this. And these scriptures were hidden, sometimes under a lake, sometimes in a stone, sometimes in actual books. And there are actual instances of revelations of scriptures of Yeshe over these centuries, even in the 18th century, 17th century, 16th century, because Yeshe lived sometime in 8th century and 11th, 12th, all these centuries, many of these treasures have been revealed. So she wrote a lot. She's like a true Saraswati writing wisdom. Saraswati, she's really created three important paths. One is Vedanta, where all the stories begin with her. Then Mahayana Buddhism, where she came as Manjushri's wife. Manjushri had two wives, Lakshmi ji and Saraswati ji, who's a big Buddha. And then as Padmasambhava's consort is Yeshe. And there she wrote all about Vajrayana Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, all kinds of practices, DT practice, how to become. They take devotion to a science level in Buddhism. In Hinduism, we have devotion. In Buddhism, also they have devotion in Vajrayana Buddhism, but it's taken it to another level. How do you, everything is defined, how do you practice? You put the picture in front of you and, you look, you gaze in the eyes and you first become, first you look at them as they are the divine being and you are the worshipper. Then at one point, you become the divine being. There are steps to all of this, and you see yourself as the divine being, and then they describe this in detail in Vajrayana Buddhism, how to do devotion. Like Meera did devotion just naturally. She just took care of the idol and she worshipped it and all of that, right? But there's a systematic way to do devotion, and that is what you learn in Vajrayana Buddhism. And she wrote about all of that, many scriptures. So where she is being married off to a tribal chief, and how she becomes a fully enlightened Buddha, and then creates a whole path in Buddhism called Vajrayana Buddhism. Again, with the same soul feelings, joy for life, love, freedom, and they're pursuing that. So they're, the East, including India and Tibet and these places, they're full of these stories of divine feminine, strong women who rose up with love and joy to create great paths. And the message for us is surrender more to these feelings. Don't live in fear, live in love, live in joy, live in freedom. Don't surrender your freedom to, some stupid ideologies and all of that, but do it with a lot of love and joy. You can be free with joy and love. Um, there are, ways in relationships, even there are contentions between daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, these things that happen, right? Now, let's say the mother-in-law says something to the daughter-in-law, and she's the older one, and the daughter-in-law doesn't like it. There's some old traditional things mother-in-laws say a lot of times. So there are many ways of dealing with it. One is you get into this energy that she's trying to control me, and I'm free, and ignore her. But you don't have to sacrifice love when you have freedom. You can hold your mother-in-law's hand, take her to the somewhere, sit down with her, keep holding her hand, look in her eyes, get as much love as possible on your in your heart, and say, I will do it like this because it makes me happy. But keep holding her hand. That body language will communicate to her that you love her, right? And you're still making a statement which is about your freedom, right? So there are ways to communicate where you can, with your body language, make people feel that they are loved, but also let them know that you are free, that you have your own path, that love doesn't have to be divorced from freedom. You want to be who you are, but you will always love them also, right? Can you have all of that together? When you put all of that together, then that becomes divine feminine. Then you are not like a feminist, which is more about fighting energy. It is about creating a path where you are inclusive, where you are the Devi, you are the goddess, and you are who you are, but you don't exclude people also. People feel your energy, they feel the love. So, it can happen the other way also. Maybe the mother-in-law is more enlightened than the daughter-in-law. I mean, this is only in the Indian context so much because there are a lot of families that live together. In the West, they don't live together so much. The mother-in-law could do the same thing too. She can come with a lot of love and freedom also and say, this is how I live, and and use the soul feelings, use body energy, use gestures. There's much you can do by in communication where you don't sacrifice love for freedom, or you don't sacrifice freedom for love. This is typically what's happening in relationships. In couples also, there are sometimes for love you sacrifice your freedom, other times for your freedom you sacrifice your love. Why do you have to sacrifice? Have both. Be skillful. Find a way. Create. That is what creativity is all about. Creativity is doing the impossible. Otherwise, there's nothing about creativity. Creativity is, how was iPhone created? It was created because Steve Jobs was shouting at his technicians that I want something that with three clicks will get to a song. And all the other, gadgets, by then you had to go 6 clicks to get to that final song. So scientists were saying, no, no, we can't do it. All his technical people. Steve Jobs didn't give up. He said, no, 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 I want it in 3 clicks only. And then they were creative, they figured it out, and that became iPod. So creativity comes in when you have to find things which are impossible. So a relationship where you feel you cannot have both love and freedom is a place where you need creativity. You need a new way of thinking where you can have tremendous love and tremendous freedom. You can be who you are and you can still have a lot of love. You don't have to be dominated, and at the same time you can have love. So this is where, as you see, I'm subtly, what I'm doing, I'm adding all the soul feelings together. I'm saying love should be with freedom, but to put them together you need creativity, which is another soul feeling. So if you start thinking deeply like this, when these soul feelings come together, you can call them soul energies also. When these energies come together, then magic starts happening in life. You don't want to give up one for the other. A lot of women give up, a lot of men give up their love lives because they want freedom. Because they think, the only way I can be free is I don't need love. I'll be independent. You can have both. And one way that Parvati ji is teaching me these days how to be both, because I'm in the financial world and I'm in the spiritual world. Sometimes in the financial world, the energy is very different and I don't like it. So I ask her, how do I deal with it? So she says, be in the body, she said. I said, I'm in the body. She said, no, no, no. When you're in the financial world, sometimes you, with the arguments, people have, you still have to be completely in the body, in the love, and this that space. So when you are dealing with these issues of love and freedom, contention, take a deep breath, become the body, feel your body. Then again, start talking. Don't get in the head. If you're having an argument, again, take a deep breath, become the body. Always become the body, because body has more intelligence than your mind. It knows the other person more. Your body is infinite, it is almost infinite intelligence, not infinite. Soul is infinite, but body is so vast compared to the mind. Like feel your body, feel your stomach, feel your heart. Put you like that, and then hold somebody's hand. Use your body in different ways. By breathing, by gestures, and give it that honor and respect that it deserves, and it'll help you. It'll help you become creative. It'll help you find both love and freedom and joy and peace. So that's the message, to create strength using
Yes.
love and
Yeah.
joy and other soul feelings. These are invisible things, but you can create tremendous strength. So that's kind of my message. If there are any other questions, we have maybe 10 more minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. From women's side. Yeah. Anuradha.
Yes,
Sir,
yes,
actually,
Anurada.
you can
Yeah.
continue, madam.
Okay, yeah,
Continue.
Anurada. Yeah, continue, continue.
Sir, actually,
Sir, what?
I don't have any question, but while I'm listening your teachings, now I experiencing that love, joy, surrenderness, and even I'm feeling that energy from your eyes. Uh, Class was fantastic. Very, very nice. It was very nice. I'm experiencing love, joy, surrender, sacrifice, everything, sir. Means feminine energy.
And even,
Thanks.
even freedom. The
Freedom. Yes, sir. Freedom. Freedom. Freedom.
control your life.
Freedom, sir.
That's the
Uh,
patriarchy. It controls everything.
yes, yes, yes.
The freedom with love and joy, and
Sir,
you what you need to get all of that is creativity. It doesn't look easy many times. In many family situations, it looks very difficult. How do I get freedom and joy? But like Mira, like these people, we are more ready now to attain that than we were at Mira's time. Because there is an awakening happening. Goddesses are supporting us. Even men today are a bit different. They're open to these ideas. Even the younger generation, the men are not so patriarchal anymore. So now creativity can be used to create a life where you can have all of it.
Yeah. Sir, actually, you have explained about the uh, joy and love using the freedom, the concept of freedom. Yeah, very well explained, sir. Incredible teaching, sir. And you are explaining that use your skills skillfully. You join the freedom and join the freedom, love, and joy. Everything you. So we need some skillfulness. That's more important, sir. Very simply, you are explaining.
In our next talk, we'll skillfully choose the name. We'll call it Love, Joy, and Freedom.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, sir. We need skillfulness. Actually, we should not to live anything, but with skillfulness we can be inclusive with everything. Yes,
Exactly.
sir.
That was
Very well
Buddha's
said,
big
sir.
message. Buddha was all about skillfulness. Skillful means is a big topic in Buddhism. Skillful simply means creative. You use your creativity to come up with better solutions. And
Mm,
and there are solutions. There are all and daily circles. There are many types that we want to create. We want these places to be places to explore this type of wisdom. And then
yes,
there'll be
sir.
some deva circles also for men. And then
Yes,
after 2, 3 years, we'll have some joy circles also, both men and women. But there is a reason that goddesses want all three to exist. There is some work that is done only in Devi circles, which will be the majority of them. Some spiritual work is done in Deva circles. There are a lot of energies that men cannot talk about in a mixed group. They want only like a male energy to surrender to the feminine. They have to talk about, what they're struggling with, about their careers, about their whatever. And then, a bigger evolution happens. Then you can have like a joy circle mixed group where you can talk about these issues. We'll have all three types, and they'll all three will be there. But Devi circles will remain the big group, the biggest group in this creation, which is coming soon. So we are working on that. That's why slowly the website, there's an app coming also, Devi app. So there'll be a Devi Circle app, which will connect different ways women in these groups and divine feminine energies. And this is where we can explore, how to be creative and how to energize our lives with more of these energies and different cultures have so many role models. In all cultures we've had these role models. I mean, there's stories of Mary Magdalene, Jesus's wife, which is so misunderstood. you know and there are other goddesses are there in all cultures. So we'll explore some of that also. So all that is coming, and I'm very happy with this great partnership we have uh, with the PSSM Global, and the creating
Thank
part.
you.
Yes, sir.
And
Thank you, sir.
not spoken to Brahmashi Patriji in some time. Soon I'll reach out to him. And we want this is the matriarchal way to have different organizations also working together. So support each other and all of that. They're different paths and they still meet. They're not like this is against that. We're all doing the same kind of work. So which is very, very, I feel very fond of this whole path that we've created, that Patriji's created with PSSM. It's very beautiful. Simply breathing and meditating and vegetarian food, and and
Yes,
loving
sir.
and Sangha, and all so beautiful.
Okay.
It's so much femininity truly is there, in this path.
Yes,
Means, sir, it is a oneness work.
Oneness work, yeah.
All
yes.
organizers. Also oneness work.
You explained about the law of attraction also very well, sir. If we are fullest, we can get everything through law of attraction. Also, you explained through the stories of Meera and
Radha,
Radha,
Radha. Yes,
Radha.
sir. Yes, yes, sir. Yeah,
yeah.
sir. Very well explained, sir. So